Hello, and welcome to a new episode of Articulations by ITERARTE. I am Tamara Chalabi, co-founder of ITERARTE, and with me today is the artist Marwan Sahramani, who is of mixed Lebanese and European heritage. Known for his rich canvas paintings, Sahramani works through vivid colors and a blend of techniques, focusing on the essence of the artworks and the emotional responses they produce. His work has been featured internationally, in Paris, Dubai, and London, among other places. In this podcast, we reflect together upon Sahramani's habit of creating outdoors in the mountains of Tarbena in Spain, the inspirations and philosophies of Emmanuel Levinas, and finding expression and solace in the sea in Lebanon where he lives, amidst the constant tensions in the country. Marwan, it's very nice to be here with you in the studio.
Nice having you, Tamara, too. Since a long time, we have a talk over the phone, and it's better to be face-to-face.
Absolutely, and I'm so happy to be here with this light that's coming from the sea that you write and paint about so much, and the light from all sides. It's great. You've talked a lot about light in the past in your work and what the meaning of light is to you. One of the questions I've always wanted to ask you is, how do you try to transmit light in your work?
In fact, every place has a specific light. And as I work in a couple of studios, like you say, there is the Enfi place and then the mountain, and now the studio in Beirut. So each space has its proper light that is transmitted in the painting in a specific way. When I talk about light, it's not about just the luminosity, it's about everything surrounding the geographic place of my studio. So yeah, now you come at the right time, the sunset is beautiful, and I'm working on a series that is more inspired by some drawing I did this year. Those drawings, I'm using very bright color, and I'm changing from a palette to another palette. It was done during winter, the light is colder, and right now coming to primavera, how we say, to the spring, light, it's much warmer, it's much colorful, and maybe it's my state of mind who's a bit more...
Hopeful,
no,
spring.
But there's strong color, but I like, each color has a proper emotion. If I use bright color, doesn't mean I'm very joyful, but I think there is many yellow also to use, and it depends which yellow I'm using. Some yellow are very acid, very lemony, and some yellow are more toned down, going to orange. So of course the light affects unconsciously, but I let it also come easily on a canvas. Like Picasso used to say, if I don't have blue, I use red.
So in fact, you are very much at peace with all colors in a way.
I love colors. I think the colors are like, how we say, musical note. There is 7, and a composer have to use the 7 notes, and he could create a symphony with it. And I think I'm trying to use the color to create. I will not work without color. Some artists who are restricted to some color, but they feel they could work with 2 or 3 colors. I need the whole palette in front of me. And of course, it is related to the light. I'm sure how we say in television, not black and white, multicolor or
technicolor.
Technicolor.
Yeah.
They call it a goddess. This mountain, they say that she wants strong woman, and if you're not strong enough, you cannot live in front of her. So there is a story behind it. I just grabbed the energy. It's really beautiful, and I paint him like it is. It's not about the shape. There's abstraction that comes from it.
And it's so magnetic. It draws you so much that you go back to it every year.
Every year I just do a production. Sometimes it's 5 paintings, sometimes it's 30 paintings.
And would you say that it's a bit like a meditation?
All my work is about meditation. It's not about this one. It's getting out from the studio.
I was going to get to the subject of light, because you talk a lot about light.
I'm completely outdoor. And the first time I got in contact with the mountain, I went from the morning till the end of the night, and I've tried to paint her realistic in a way, but with the changing of light. So even at one point at 11 in the night, I used to take my easel and go down with my little light and try to paint it. It was completely dark, sometimes with the moon. So I really tried to catch the light falling. And then it changed with time. After 10 years, I've changed. It's about the feeling. Really, it's how to grab the impermanence,
the impermanence, the
impermanence
ephemerality.
yeah.
And what's the name of the mountain again?
La Sierra de Bernia. It's a goddess. I feel I'm connected to something.
It's a goddess because the local people call it a goddess?
They say it's a goddess, that it's a very strong woman. And I try to grab the energy around it. Just an energy. I feel connected with spirituality, with the universe.
Do you think that this feeling that you have, are you able to reconnect to it every time you go back? Do you find that feeling again?
My practice in Spain is like an enlightenment in meditation. I really feel elevated, and there's something that I don't feel when I'm in Lebanon, because I feel more rooted and more grounded in Lebanon. Energy in Lebanon is so different, but in Spain I feel elevated. So my painting are really completely different than what I do this. Even if I use the same color, I have more or less the same light in the Middle East than in Spain, but there is something else that I could not express that is transmitted in the painting. It's an energy, it's a vibration. I think we are connected in a way by this vibration.
It's simpler, perhaps.
It's simpler, you find it. It's much simpler. I think in painting, what's really important to me is the vision. What you look and what you have, it's what you see. I see it and I feel it, and then I put it on the canvas in a very easy, soft way, without any effort. And every year is different. The painting I do are different. This year I've put my wife in front of the painting, and I wanted to do a collaboration between a figure and the surrounding. So I worked a lot on some connection between human and the nature. And so it wasn't the best painting, but it was interesting to see.
Also very female, I would say, because...
yeah, exactly. And my wife is a strong person. The paintings were interested, some of them were strong. It was difficult because I was focusing on a person, on a figure, even on the face, because the face is your mirror of existence. And I don't want to go too philosophical, but there is Levinas who talk a lot about the eye, and you see your own death when you see someone else. This landscape, it's interesting to see how it reacts or what's come from it.
Also the contrast between the landscape that is, as you say, eternal, will continue forever.
Very short
time on this earth.
The year before, my painting is very sick, and in fact, I learned how to repaint in front of the mountain. It happened 12 years ago. Before that...
What do you mean, learned how to repaint? That's a big statement.
I was free from all contention. I was free from a lot of history baggage. And then if I go back to 20 years ago, my painting was really related to this region because of my identity. My struggle was very, I don't want to say political, but related to my identity. And my identity is very complex because my mother is Palestinian, and so there was this kind of
tension.
So my painting was reflecting this, and when I decided to move in Spain, I said to myself, I want to paint in front of the nature and have one single thing to look at it, forget about everything. So I took the tube and les pinceaux, the brushes, and I let it go. The first painting was new for me.
To your work, but also a great burden to carry, because you are constantly referring back to this tradition as almost a responsibility, I would say. When you talk about the Impressionists, you are very aware of the incredible works that they've done and the things that they have carved in this world. But at the same time, you have such respect for it, and it informs so much of what you do, even though you are existing in a different landscape and a different reality. Can you tell us more about this?
I had a very rigorous education by knowing how to draw modèle vivant, and then a sculpture of a plaster for years. At one point in life, I decided to stop painting.
What did you do?
I tried to work in advertising, in graphic design. It didn't work. But I've stopped for 5-6 years because I didn't believe in the act of painting anymore.
Why?
Because the contemporary scene was very present in the 90s. First painting was completely
put aside.
we were in the world where photography, video a lot, installation not that much, were
dominant.
Yeah, and my ego, maybe it was a bit of insecurity. I didn't believe in me as a painter, especially when you look behind what you were saying. So I stopped for 6 years, 7 years. I came back to painting. There was a wedding of one of my best friends, and I want to give him something very personal. And the only thing I thought, it was my early painting, early drawing. So I came to Lebanon. I was living in Canada, and I opened my portfolio. I said, there was like 10. I said, choose whatever you want. And he said, oh, you stopped 6 years without any, I didn't touch any brush. It's stupid, how did you stop all this? I look at the trace I kept for 5 or 6 years of when I was practicing and my education. No trace of my life. And I say to myself, every day I will wake up in the morning, I need to keep a trace of my existence. So I decide to re-put a minute of my life into a paper. But of course, I came back where I left it 6 years ago. So I have this huge baggage of the art. I didn't know where to go. So I began unconsciously the process with a lot of incertitude and trying also to discover myself, because I have, like I told you, many identities. And I kept it organic with a lot of weakness.
What do you mean weakness? I mean, that's very strong judgment on your part.
I left the painting because I thought I was not good enough in the history of art. And I said to myself, I'm not supposed to be on this chain. It's okay if I do something and I'm nowhere. I'm just doing it for myself. Until now, when I have this uncertainty, I still remember the first time when I came back to painting. It's just a proof of my existence.
And you started this in Canada 7 years after?
7 years after. The road was difficult because, of course, ego sometimes bring you back to the reality of the art scene, or to the reality of you want to sell, you want to please, you want to be part of a community. This is a part of me that I've been painting like this. It was political. And then when I came back to Spain, it's weird how life brings you what you need. And I went back to Spain because of family, but I chose the right place to be. And it's a mountain who called me, a goddess. And relearn how to paint there with a completely free mind, putting aside the ego and just connecting with stories, connecting with even artists. At the end, artists come back to you. I think every artist has a connection with his mentors. I'm connected to many painters that I respect, like this one now.
I see you're working on Caravaggio now. Tell me, because Caravaggio has such a dramatic story, but also particularly in connection to light.
A lot, yeah, true. I know Caravaggio is the father of the clair-obscur. But Caravaggio, what's interests me, I know his life. His life was very chaotic, and he was a free artist, and they all tried to grab him. And the violency that is, I think, in the being of Caravaggio, I can relate to it as my own identity too.
So the violence that he has, that you relate to, which I'm sure also can be seen in many of the artists you admire, would you say that is a big driver to paint as a form of expression?
Yeah, I feel the violency that I feel in all the paintings that I really like, even the contemporary one. The only thing that I feel, I'm living in Spain, I really look at the light as a cosmic light. In Lebanon, I look at the light like a very violent light that is coming from us and not from an outer source. The light is very powerful, and it's bring me to painting. I don't know how to express it verbally, but it's just an unconscious feeling.
And would you say the violence that you talk about, it's because there's also energy that comes with violence. It's often related to a physical act. Would you say that this violence is triggered by something else, that's anger?
I think the violence in me maybe is genetic, maybe is something that I carry not from myself, but it is triggered by the land and by the ground that I'm living in this region. And I think Lebanon and the region have seen it's really rich of violent history since 4,000 years. And I can feel this in my body, but for sure it triggered it. And then I express it in a painting in a way. It must be, I think in violence there is something very logical and very reasonable.
So when you are in front of a canvas and you have this impulse, how do you start painting? How do you begin?
There is many ways a canvas is executed. It's very easy to say those paintings were inspired by what's happening in the region right now, in Gaza and even, let's say, Ukraine, but also especially here. And I can feel the energy that's around. There's one big entity and there's one smaller. And there is a dominance about one on the left and one on the right. There is this dominance where there is a conundrum about one person into another. It's a series of paintings that led me to those two persons.
But it's interesting because one person is much more present than the other person,
but
figuratively.
And the other one is just something that is bigger.
Bigger and more abstract.
And that come from not only individuality, but I think violence is something that is part of the creation of the universe. The whole universe is created by
a violent act.
Violent act. And every human has this inside it himself.
Right.
So I begin with a drawing.
You begin with a drawing?
That's why I was saying every painting has its own stories.
What about the paintings that you made about where you go and you are with nature, with the sea? You talk a lot about the sea and your relationship to Beirut, to being here, is very much also about the sea. And you looking at the sea, you being in the sea being almost a comfort, a protective layer, because it gives you a compass wherever you are in this country. Can you tell us more about the series, about being there? I mean, is it similar to Spain, to the mountain?
In fact, it was... I've got this house next to the sea, really, 15 meters away. I thought in Lebanon I will only paint in Beirut. So because of the situation, I had to run away, and I lived for 1 year in front of the sea. And sometimes it's amazing how stuff comes to you when you need it. And this period was after the explosion and after the revolution. And I think I didn't want to paint the explosion. I didn't want to paint what's happened here. I think it's too much in front of us. There's nothing to paint about it.
Also, your studio is very close. We were looking now at the port in front of us, in fact.
And the whole studio went into a blast. So it was a tough moment. And I say to myself, I think the violence was too much here. I don't have anything to describe anymore. And I found myself in front of the sea. It's like finding myself in front of the mountain. And I got paint what was in front of me. And swimming is a big part of my life. I've been always swimming. I love being in the sea, winter and summer. Just go and spend an hour, like right now in February, I'm going tomorrow. Because sometimes it's good to change. And I think the painting are it's a trace. It's more important than the geography. It's gonna stay in my life, and I like to look back when I'll be in 20 years ago in front and look at this painting
and take you back to that moment.
And it was really a moment in front of the sea. I love being in the water. I love having the head in the water.
Can you tell us a little bit more, because you communicate this a lot in your series? You are able to somehow, when looking at these paintings, the blue is so immersive that you are completely enveloped in it. It is literally like you are painting inside the sea.
But the thing is, inside the sea, and there is still me. At the end, it's me. It's not the sea. It's what I feel in the sea. And it's still an envelope, it's a serene environment. And my entity is contained, and it's a trace of me. It's very calligraphic also. This is what I like in the Chinese painting. Just the white paper and the ink, and then how it's blending, and it's the instant of the gesture. And here it's not the mountain, it's just the blue area, the water that's surrounding me, and it's me who is swimming in the sea or having one stroke, one form, one gesture in the painting. So
in a way, these paintings, because they are series and they are a progression. I mean, each painting, technically you could say they look very similar to each other, but at the same time, each painting has a different movement.
Yeah, each painting, and at the end, it's like taking a paper and then having a doodle, or you draw, you just put a little thought on a paper. It's like a journal. So you put it here, you put it there, you put it the next morning, and each stroke has his own presence, but the frame is the sea. This is when I was a kid, the sea was on my right, and I love to see this horizon in Lebanon. Each of us had this,
yes.
Depend where you're going, from north to south to south. And I was 6 or 7, and it made me dream what's behind this horizon. And I had the chance to paint this horizon for you.
But also the horizon that has such incredible change of color throughout the day.
True.
Like a huge symphony.
So I did around maybe 50 paintings about the sea. And during the day, during the night, I painted in the night too. I did the same thing I did in Spain 12 years ago. Maybe it is an homage to myself when I was 5 and 6, to this questioning about the horizon. Do you die after the horizon?
In fact, it's quite interesting because in a way, when you talk about the horizon, there's a flatness. People, couldn't believe that it was round for a long time. And in a way, what you're talking about with the falling is you see there's a flatness there.
And it's frightening. When I was a kid, it was frightening. There is just this that is stopping everything. And now...
Because after the horizon is death.
That's what I felt when I was a kid. And it's not about perfect, it's the fear of this horizon. It's like the brushstroke I do. I'm gonna swim the whole thing and I'm gonna arrive at the end. And during all this, it's like before the fear of the ending of this. And it was nice being in front of the horizon for the first time in my life. I always dreamt to live in front of the sea.
Did it match your dream?
I could have pursued more. The only thing there, I didn't have a lot of space to work. This constrained me a lot. I needed more space. I need a huge studio in front of the sea, like what I have in front of the mountain. I'm sure my pictorial research would have been more. Maybe it will come back. There is a painter I really like who pushed this, Miguel Barcelo. He painted the sea and what's inside, what's outside, the creature inside. And because he's living also in Spain and his studio is in front of the sea. So I can understand his research about the depths of the water, and in my practice about the sea.
But let's go back for a second, because you also talk a lot about wanting to come back or having that total freedom to paint like a child.
I draw since I'm 3 years old, and I'm sure every year, I remember when I was 5, there's this teacher who told my parents, your kids only like to draw. And then there was war, and I remember during war, my family has a collection of artists, say Degas, Monet, Manet, and I look at it very innocently, not knowing is it good or not good.
Talking about art books.
I didn't understand anything, but I was just looking at them innocently without knowing there is... But I continued drawing and drawing and drawing. And during school, this is the only thing I like to do. But then when you go to art school,
Was that a struggle?
Horrible. No, it was good for them. No, when I was 18, they told me do whatever you do, but you know that painting doesn't make
money.
You cannot live from it. But I did what I want, but I regret it. I didn't do it much before with an education, really an education of someone who guided me. When you're 18, you're already formatted. It's like learning the piano at 18 or 19, it's very difficult.
Because you started using your hands when you were 3. So people come to painting or to art and creativity in different ways. There's no one journey.
There's no one journey, but I have this idealist journey of the peintre de la Renaissance before becoming painter.
As an apprentice in
12
an
years,
atelier
yeah.
or...
And I learned very, very young how to draw everything. So I have this phantasma about it. Not only Renaissance, but I think the whole history of art, there's something very mystical about it and very romantic. And I wish I had it. I wish I had it, especially in the environment we lived during the war. There was nothing dreaming and poetic about it. Maybe there was for other people, but there was no escape. So my only escape was those books and the Caucasian carpet that my father had on the floor, the abstraction of it. With time I understand now, but before that I didn't understand how there was those who do something completely abstract and very geometric and very mathematical, and those crazy artists from the 20th century.
That really spoke to you.
He was an amazing drawer, Degas. I don't like it anymore, but then there was phrenology, weird enough. He stuck in my head. Picasso also. I never understood Picasso when I was a kid. Why he did this blue period and then he did this cubist. I don't understand. Monet also impressed me a lot. His landscape, his outdoor painting.
Tell me, how did you react when you saw them live? When you went to a museum for the first time and you saw a real Monet?
When I moved from Lebanon in 1988, just after the war, to Paris was a renaissance for myself. The first time I remember, even more impressive, it's not the painting, of course the painting, but the building. I remember when I entered the Opéra Garnier, it was impressive. It was like a renaissance for me, the power of the creation.
And that permanence, which we struggle with here.
We know Lebanon was always erased and rebuilt, there's nothing that is left.
There is such an interesting archaeological heritage is still being dug up.
What's more interesting, because I'm part of it right now, inconscience collective. If I go to the Western, I don't feel anything anymore. It's like I drank the whole bottle and I'm satisfied with what I've seen. If I see a good moment, there's more to it for me. Being nature, but in Lebanon there is more to it. In a way, there is an unlimited connection with unconscious, collective unconscious that is so enriching for me. That is 3,000 years, and I find it fascinating, and I can feel it.
And that gives you energy to paint.
That gives me drive to paint a lot. Drive and energy and curiosity.
Tell me something. I think you have had many different periods. Break down your art and organize it in periods and years, and you do refer to important dates as key moments, whether it was 12 years ago when you first went to Spain or 2019 when you had to, of course there was a dramatic events happening in Lebanon, and this is very much connected to what you're talking about, tracing your existence, keeping a tab on things. But were there certain moments when you had to take a break from painting? I see that you have worked with clay, that you have worked with certain installations, and they're beautiful. Can you tell us more about that? I mean, they were an interruption from your practice, technically, but they are also part of your practice.
Yeah, they connect. From every medium is connect to the other. I don't think it's completely separated. I think sculpture practice is very small. I didn't have the opportunity to pursue it more. I need more means, and the country doesn't give it to me so much. I don't have the whole setup. But it's just a need, and sometimes there's forms that I could not translate it into paper or into a painting, and I needed to create it
a
three-dimensionality.
Which, by the way, is very present in your painting. I mean, your paintings are very textured. The brush strokes are very deep and very layered. And this is what's very interesting. There is this protrusion which also has a connection with the energy and the violence in a way.
Exactly. The sculpture are really related, I think, with the body as a body shape. There is this energy that I could only create it within the medium of sculpting. If you talk about Giacometti, for example, he needed to find the existentiality of every person inside his rectilinear, and he took out and couldn't find it at the end. For me, it's the contrary. I just need to shape myself, my body, or to go back to the form of what we are in the surrounding, and the sculpture is here it breaks the universe in a way.
It interrupts.
Yeah, maybe Fontana wanted to express this.
He had to do it actually by breaking the canvas in a sense, or ripping it.
It's like I don't know how to express it.
A vista, maybe another layer.
A universe. With science now we are really connected. There is proof, scientific proof, and not only esoteric. There is multiple universe, and they're trying to, and the quantum physics and all this. So in my practice, I can sense what's scientifically being proved.
Do you get into a trance when you paint? It's a very intense moment of presence when you are painting, and yet at the same time you are lost in the painting.
Yeah, I think when you are in the present, and all people who do meditation, you're completely in the present. There is no future, there is no past, and this is where I feel I'm good. And my act of painting is only a translation of this moment. So every brush stroke is translating the present. I'm living it in my life. So at the end there is a painting, but I focus in the microcosm. And sometimes it works, the painting is good, you don't know why. Maybe the present was very generous with me, or sometimes the painting needs to be strong.
Really?
No.
And how do you know when you finish the painting?
Every painter will tell you can feel it. There's nothing to explain, it's just finished. And sometimes it's never finished. But I always give space to unfinished. So I keep the painting, I try not to sign it directly, because I don't want to be very optimistic and say, oh, this is a great painter and it's finished. Sometimes a couple of years ago or a couple of weeks ago, oh, it's unfinished. But I have the chance, sometimes it's just finished.
So let me ask you this, because talking about the present, I mean, it's a very liberating moment, the present, because it is supposed to be free from the past and the future. It's very grounding. But you have such an interesting mixed heritage. You've talked about the different identities you've had, and in a way, that's a whole struggle which has also come out in your paintings, I mean, over the years, and perhaps arriving at a moment where you are just in front of a goddess, where there's a purification of all of this, or a simplification of it. But can you tell us more, when you talk about being a child and having the books of Degas and a Caucasian painting? I mean, you are an interesting mix of European, of Middle Eastern. How does it feed you?
I discover myself along the road, along the journey. It's like you're in the middle of the forest all your life, or even I could say you swim till the horizon, and you're getting there. And you don't know which road you're taking, but you have to take a road, or in the water you have to swim against the current, or in the sea. If someone tell me, you want to teach painting, tell me, why don't you teach? I could not. I'm still learning how to paint. I wish I had the confidence in myself and knowing what I'm doing. I paint one subject and I stick to it. I think painting is about myself. It's a mirror. It's just myself who's talking to myself, and then understanding myself. And especially my identity, I have a mix of everything.
But it's very layered.
Every period is related to my state, my journey in life, my questioning, my struggle. Whenever I find it, I move out and do something else. Because I'm doing it for myself.
You are authentic, you are being honest with yourself, and that's...
I think it's like it's just a journal that I'm writing.
And speaking of writing, do you have any authors, any books that have been very important in your artistic journey?
Yeah, of course, a lot of writer has inspired me. I was inspired, especially in my 20s, mostly by a Western writer. I really love Georges Bataille.
What do you love most about him?
Like what I feel in front of Caravaggio, the history of Caravaggio, I feel the same with Bataille. The whole questioning about death, sexuality. I like Lautréamont also. I really like Lautréamont. There is one book I really love, Le Chant de Maldoror. Fantastic. He's inspired by Dante. I was inspired by this at one point in my life because Michelangelo was around me.
You mean you were in communion with him?
So I felt there is something about the the violence in Saint and Dante were they're similar. And Michelangelo has this issue about paradise and hell. And I love Spanish literature. Right now, I read this wonderful book from Stefan Zweig, this 2 years ago, Le Monde d'hier. I don't know if you read it. But spectacular. It resonates with me as a half Austrian or 1/3 of Austrian, and his story as an artist. He killed himself, and he was a
very humanist.
It's nice how he tried to explain his feeling and his doubts about him as a writer and his journey and his practice. During the first year when he wanted to be a writer, he felt himself with no confidence, so he decided to translate all the big writer in German because he didn't felt good enough to
write himself. Great. So I look forward to the next chapter of your writing, which you can also be writing on a canvas. No,
if I don't paint, sometimes I stop painting. I just have a full of sketchbooks.
Incredible. So this is your time away from painting.
Sometimes I come back into painting.
How many of these do you have?
Dozen.
Yeah.
It goes from abstraction to figuration to. Sometimes what I find very difficult, I don't have it in front of me to translate it into a painting
immediately, because there's a need for an immediate expression.
And sometimes I go back to a drawing I did 3-4 years ago. I say, oh, maybe I should rework this little doodle.
So it's really, they're your companions, these notebooks.
It's a trace of my journey.
Thank you, Marwan. That was wonderful.
Thank